Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Gopi Jana Vallabha Giri Varadari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Yashodanandana Prajajana Rajana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto number 3, chapter 26. And we'll be starting from text number 26, as far as I remember. Chitti Lakshanam. So we're hearing about the analysis of the material elements from Kapila to his mother Devahuti. So we actually studied this verse, which was 26. So today we will be on text 27. Okay? Oh, 27 we did also. Vaikadikad. That was about the false ego. And we're starting on text 28. Yat viduhu aniruddha akyam rishikanam adhishwaram sharda indivara syamam sangradhyam yogivihe shanaya yadvidurhyanirudhyakyam rishikanamadishwaram sharadhani varasyamham Sangradhyam yogi vishanai Yadvidur yanirudhya rudhakyam Rishikanamadishwaram Sharadenivara Vishyamam Sangradhyam yogi vishanai Yadvidur yanirudhyakyam Rishikanamadishwaram Sharadenindavarasyamam Sangradhyam yogi vishanai. Now we'll go all night. Please give us a few minutes. We'll chant in the temple room in the meantime. Would you like to go, Prabhu? Yadvidur yanirudhakyam Rishikanamadishwaram Saradenishvarasyamam
One sec. Sorry. Okay, you can go ahead, Gurudev.
Yadvidur yanirudhakyam
Yadviduryanirudhakyam
Rishikanam
Shikanamadishwaram
Sharadendivara Shamam
Sharadendivarasyamam
Samradyam Yogi Bhishanai
Samradyam Yogishanai
Yadvidur Hyanirudakyam
Yadviduryanirudhakyam
Rishikanamadishvaram
Shikanamadishwaram
Sharadindivarashyamam Samradyam Yogi Bhishanai.
Yeah, if you want. Oh, I didn't. Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't know. Okay. Yadviduryanirudhakyam Shikanamadishwaram Sharadendivarasyamam Samradyam Yogishanai. Okay.
Yadvidur yanirudhakyam
Yadviduryanirudhakyam
Rishikanamadishwaram
Shikanamadishwaram
Sharadendivarasyamam
Sharadendivarasyamam
Samradyam yogi bhishanam
Samradyam Yogishanai. Sarvamadaji.
Yadvidurhi aniruddhakyam
Yadviduryanirudhakyam
Rishikanamadhishwaram
Shikanamadishwaram
Saradendiparashamam
Sharadendivarasyamam
Samradhyam yogi bhishanahe.
Samradyam Yogishanai. Krishna Mataji.
Yad यनिरुद्धाख्यं ऋषिकाणाम् अधीश्वरम् सारदेन्दीवरस्यामम् सम्राध्यं योगिभिः शनैः
यद्विदुर्यनिरुद्धाख्याम् ऋषिकाणामधीश्वरम् सारदेन्द्रिवराश्यामम् सम्राध्यं योगिभिः शनैः.
That's everyone. Yet, which mind
is known. Indeed, Aniruddhakya Akyam, by the name Aniruddha. Rishikanam, of the senses. Adhishwaram, the supreme ruler. Sharada, autumnal. Indivara, like a blue lotus. Syamam, bluish. Sangradhyam, who is found. Yogibihi, by the yogis. Shanai, gradually. Translation. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish-black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. Report. The system of yoga entails controlling the mind, and the Lord of the mind is Aniruddha. It is stated that Aniruddha is four-handed, with Sudarshan Chakra, conch shell, club, and lotus flower. There are 24 forms of Vishnu, each differently named. Among these 24 forms, Sankarsana, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Vasudeva are depicted very nicely in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it is stated that Aniruddha is worshipped by the yogis. Meditation upon voidness is a modern invention of the fertile brain of some speculator. Actually, the process of yoga meditation, as prescribed in this verse, should be fixed upon the form of Aniruddha. By meditating on Aniruddha, one can become free from the agitation of acceptance and rejection. When one's mind is fixed upon Aniruddha, one gradually becomes God-realized. He approaches the pure status of Krishna consciousness, which is the ultimate goal of yoga. Yadvidur yaniruddhakyam rishikanam madishwaram sharadendivara syamam sangradhyam yogibi shanai. The mind of the living entity is known by the name of Lord Aniruddha, the supreme ruler of the senses. He possesses a bluish-black form resembling a lotus flower growing in the autumn. He is found slowly by the yogis. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Thank you for being here. Please let us know if you have any comments, Maharaj, or any of the devotees here by raising your hand, and we'll try to attend to that. So here Prabhupada points out that yoga is about controlling the mind. And the general process of yoga as recommended for previous ages was the system of Ashtanga Yoga, which actually was present at this time when Lord Kapila was speaking to his mother, Devahuti. That system of yoga entails yama, niyama, pratyahara, pranayama, asana, dharana, like that, and then ultimately to samadhi. And it's a system of mechanically calming the mind while simultaneously giving the mind a positive engagement. If we have the mechanical process of controlling the mind through proper behavior, through breathing techniques, and through asana, that is fine. But if we do not give it something to meditate upon, then the yoga system is actually a type of a concoction, and it's actually a distraction on the path of devotional service, which is why it's not very much recommended for those who want pure devotional service to become distracted by a process which is devoid of God consciousness. And then one can say, well, what if I add God consciousness to my yoga practice? So then that's the authorized yoga practice, but not recommended as the primary process for God realization in the Kali Yuga because of our bodily and mental limitations. So then one can say, well, it's bona fide, I like it better, it's more fun to me, but it's less effective at achieving the goal. So then one has to be honest with oneself and say, oh, if I'm taking up a process which is actually less effectual towards my actual goal, then I'm more attached to the process than the goal. If there's a better process for me to adopt to get the goal, right? Then I decide to engage in a different process towards the goal, which is slower or less effective, then it means I'm more attached to the process than the goal. And that's why it's so important for us to hear the Bhagavatam, because we're given continual medicine that we should hear about the glories of pure devotional service. Pure devotional service is the goal. Pure devotional service is the crest jewel of our life, and that is being offered by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Panchatattva and their descendants through the process of Sankirtan Yagya. So we hear the Bhagavatam, we worship the deity, we chant the holy name, we live in the holy places, we create holy places in our homes, we live there with devotees, we associate with devotees, and we serve the devotees. So that's actually the 5 processes that are most important, called Panchangam Bhakti, and those things are most stressed by the followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and by their mercy, by Lord Nityananda's mercy and Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, they're flooding the entire universe with love of God. That's actually stated that Lord Nityananda has actually flooded the entire universe with love of God. So we just have to act in such a way that we can be pulled into the riptide or to the current of that flood of love. So we have to accept what's favorable for pure devotional service and reject what's unfavorable. So those are some thoughts about this. But we take it as a principle, right? That yoga means to control the mind. We are also performing yoga. And that was mentioned many times by Rochande Prabhu, is that it's very important for us to remember that we are yogis in ISKCON. We are yogis. And actually, this Krishna consciousness movement, the Sankirtan Yajna, is producing the most serious of yogis on the planet, because this is the most effective form of yoga to achieve the perfection of consciousness, love of God. So we have to control the mind too. That is our goal, or that is part of the yoga process. It's not the goal. Actually, one can say if one is Krishna conscious, there's no need to control the mind. The mind is already controlled, right? Because if one is Krishna conscious and they love Krishna, there's actually a 7th verse chapter, and Prabhupada stated this is the essence of the Krishna consciousness movement, 7.1 of Bhagavad Gita. And he states that one whose mind is attached to me, right? That person is performing the yoga. They actually, manasakta, asakti, mind attached to me, asamshaya, taking shelter of me. So then Prabhupada oftentimes he mentions that, if we love somebody, then our mind is just inextricably it's impossible to stop the magnetic force of our love. Our mind will just go to that person without any restriction, even against our will. If we're attached to something, the mind is just going there again and again. And so, if we're self-reflective, we can see, right? My mind is still attached to material sense objects. And what does that mean? If my mind is attached to material sense objects, right, that means that actually I'm under the sway of the lust, right? Because I'm not my body. So material sense objects have actually they're not important for my very being, and I'm spiritual, I'm Satchidananda, I'm Sanatan. So I actually need Sanatan engagement. But if my mind is attached to temporary pleasures of this world, I can see actually to that extent, I'm actually covered by lust. Right? So these things are actually discussed in the Bhagavad Gita, that every living entity is covered by different degrees of lust. Right? The trees are covered like a womb covers the embryo. It means it's very covered, very covered. He's there. He kind of knocks around every once in a while and he makes noises, whatever. But he's very covered. So that's like the tree, right? And the tree and the bird and the bee and the animals and all these creatures, they're meditating on sense objects. Their mind is completely drawn towards the objects of the senses. So we have to perform our yoga practice in such a way that the mind becomes a friend. So I was just listening to a small excerpt from a devotee, and he was saying, if you want a small practical technique, you're going to have to live with your mind for a long time. So you might as well try to make him your friend. And he said, here's a practical technique to do so. Every night before you go to bed, you write your 3 main priorities on a piece of paper. And let that be the first thing that you look at in the day. So it says, make it your main purpose to achieve these before anything else. Right? So then he said, if you give your mind a little direction ahead of time, then you reinforce that. Then your mind can kind of actually help you a little bit. And this is actually, there's actually an art to being determined. There's actually an art to it, and it's actually a whole lifestyle, which Srila Prabhupada has actually given us. So then the devotees, their main priority every morning is they worship Krishna. They do bhajan. They do nam bhajan. They do their puja, They meditate on the form of the Lord. They meditate on the holy names. They worship the spiritual master. They study Srimad Bhagavatam. These are the main things that the devotees try to do before they do anything else, which are all very important after, because they're all connected to Krishna. But to only be connected to Krishna, right, as much as I connect to Krishna, first thing. And we can do that study in our life too, because if we have a disconnected morning program, or we don't have a morning program, then Krishna still is kind to us, and he still gives us services to perform for him throughout the day. But there's like an intensity and a clarity of purpose that I personally feel if I didn't have, a strong morning. And there is a lack of ability to actually control the mind by higher intelligence. And the mind may become easily derailed from Krishna's service, or I might perform Krishna's service, but in a very spaced out way, or very distracted and very stressed way. And so we can think about some of these techniques and employ these in our practice. So Prabhupada then discusses about the forms of the Lord, and he speaks about there's 24 forms. So actually I went to a deity course hosted by the ISKCON World Deity Ministry, and the devotees there are very sweet and very nectar, and we did an amazing Sangha. And one of the things that we learned was to do the 24-step Vaishnava Achman. And it's actually a type of a kavacha. It's an armor. Just like we put on our tilak, this is spiritual armor. This is not negligible. This is highly important, and actually given in the nectar of devotion, Prabhupada says that one generally has to decorate one's body with valuable jewels and crystals. These jewels and crystals actually protect one from lower types of energies and purify the body. And so now it's kind of a fad to wear crystals and jewels and things within the hippie movement. And of course, many Indians always have different particular crystals according to their body type or their mental condition. And these things are actually generally recommended through the astrological charts and things like that. One devotee may have been recommended to wear pearl. One devotee will wear some red stones. Some devotee, some other stones like this. Prabhupada describes the nectar devotion. If one cleanses the body thoroughly in the morning and rises early and applies Vaishnava tilak of Gopi Chandan, which is actually sacred clay, very precious. Prabhupada chastised one of his disciples once and said, do not waste a drop of it. Do not waste a drop. It's very precious. And why? Because actually this Gopi Chandan is a very sacred. There's actually a Leela about it. Therefore it's called Gopi Chandan. So it's from different places like Dwarka, Mayapur, different places. And it's a very fine clay. And this clay has a whitish yellow color. And that's the one that generally the followers of Lord Chaitanya apply with the Urdhva Pundram, I think it's called, which means this shape, this U shape, which represents the heel of Lord Vishnu, and Brahma and Shiva sit on the two sides. And this part is meant to be cleared. I probably didn't do it properly. And then there's a tulsi leaf at the bottom. And you put this on 12 places on the body, and then you wash your hands, right? Use all of it, right? Don't waste anything. And then whatever tiny bit is just in the cracks, you wash it. And then with the right hand, you apply here on the shika, and you say Om Vasudevaya Namaha. That's the 13th step. So anyway, Vaishnava Achman is another type of additional purification, which is done before one does his puja. There's different types of Achman. One can do a simple Achman, where you just wash your hands. That's also a type of an Achman. Just rinse your hands or purify with some water. Ideally, that water will have been, ideally a Brahmana would have invoked the holy rivers to that water, right? And that water will be actually empowered with some bija mantra for purification and used by the pujaris or the devotees. Then that water, and also purified with mantra. So that water is can purify if it's Ganga water, or if it's Saraswati water, or all the holy rivers. Then even a drop can purify. So that's the idea behind the Achman. Just need a drop. Of course, water in any way is purifying, and it's also mentioned in the yoga practice. It was mentioned in previous ages that, and also in the Bhagavatam, that sometimes the yogis, they would touch water. They'd make sure to touch the water to purify the mind and the consciousness and begin their yoga practice. And actually, the Muslims also have this practice, like when they enter a room or something, and they like touch the water, different things like this. And they have a serious practice to wash the feet and the hands and the mouth and the ears and so on, and the eyes and everything before they actually enter the temple. This is a type of a purification that actually comes from the Vedas. So, but you have the sacred water, but then you also have the mantra. So this Vaishnava Achman is 24 steps. So it starts with the 12 that we're familiar with the Tilak mantras, and then it goes to the next phase. And the next group is Vasudevaya Namaha, Om Sankarshanaya Namaha, Om Pradyumnaya Namaha, Om Anirudhaya Namaha. So this is Anirudhaya Namaha, the right eye. So you actually touch this part of the eye with these fingers here, and you say Om Anirudhaya Namaha. And then Om Purushottamaya Namaha, Om Om Adhokshajaya Namaha, Om Nrsinghaya Namaha. Like this, you do different mudras, and you invoke the protection of Lord Vasudeva, Lord Vishnu, on all the different parts of the body: the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the head, the navel, the chest, the arms, like that, all these things. And you do the cheeks at first, and then the lips, like that. There's a series. So it was actually very nice to associate with that, with this Vaishnava Achman, because you actually get closer to all these names. These are all different forms of Krishna, which actually exist eternally in the spiritual world, in the different Vaikuntha planets. And they have their different names, and they have mercy for us in different forms. So Aniruddha is actually the controller of the mind, and the yogis are actually meditating on his specific form. So there's different articles that Vishnu holds: the conch, the lotus, the club, and the disc, or the Sudarshan chakra. And depending on which hand he's holding these in, of the four hands, then he has a different name. And he's worshipped by different devotees, and the yogis are actually advised to meditate on Aniruddha. So these things are actually, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purport, described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the mind has to be made into the friend, and the mind can be made into the friend by absorption in Krishna's service. And then the mind will move along the proper track, and there is a technique that Prabhupada gives in one of the purports of the Srimad Bhagavatam too, where he talks about sankalpa. And so the technique he mentions is when the mind works under a spiritual urge, right? The mind can work wonderfully under the influence of a spiritual urge. So the idea is to remind ourselves of our motivations and intentions before we execute our services, so that the mind is actually pushing us towards our goal instead of away from it. So we might remember about the mercy of our spiritual master and how we actually want to reciprocate with how he has saved our life. So then when we're doing our service, when the mind becomes nervous that he's not getting any sense gratification, we remind ourselves through that higher intelligence and setting an intention first very clearly. Say, this is why I'm doing this. I know what I'm doing. I know why I'm doing it. I have to such and such and such, right? So it can be unlimited actually. There's so much spiritual intelligence, and Prabhupada is always giving us amazing reasons to focus the mind on Krishna's service. And it's not hackneyed. It's not just one-sided. It can be personal, and it should be emotional also, because we are emotional beings. So if we're feeling very grateful, we can use that gratitude to encourage the mind to move in the right direction of Krishna's service, right? And if we're feeling a little bit shameful, then we might be able to use that. And actually, that's actually the art of Krishna consciousness, is to, whatever Krishna gives me, he's the master of my senses. He's giving me some emotions. I'm feeling a certain way. Let me use my higher intelligence and my shastric knowledge to turn that into a fuel for focusing the mind on Krishna's service. You know, we might feel angry. So what did Hanuman do when he felt angry at at Ravana? They lit his tail on fire, and he jumped around the whole city and destroyed everything. You know, and if we're feeling angry, then we can direct that towards the people who are actually opposing Krishna's supremacy in the material world. And what's the best way to fight them is to actually distribute Prabhupada's books and chant the holy name and distribute prasadam with a smile, being detached from results, doing our best effort to try, right? And so on and so forth. So yeah, these are some ideas that I thought of. Thank you for tolerating me, and please share some thoughts if you would. You have something, Prabhu? Jagannath Prabhu? You have anything? Okay. Anyone online? You can raise your hand. No? Okay. So little let me go back here. So Prabhupada mentions about the speculators. So this is actually a big problem, is that Prabhupada says they have a fertile brain. They have a fertile brain. And unfortunately, it was spoken about in the previous verse that from the false ego of goodness, another transformation takes place. From this evolves the mind, whose thoughts and reflections give rise to desire. So Prabhupada mentioned there that as long as the mind is on the material platform, they'll simply jump back and forth between accepting and rejecting things based on sense gratification, or the perceived sense gratificatory value that the mind imbues upon something. And this is the thing, is the mind is actually making investments. It's like, oh, I already analyzed that flower, and it has a certain amount of sense gratificatory potency that I can, get advantage of. And we can see how the mind, we're always investing a certain value according to our sense gratification. This is the business of the mind. And until we come to the platform of Krishna consciousness, we'll just be jumping back and forth. And therefore, the philosophies of such a person who is simply bouncing back and forth on this mental platform, acting only in relation to how much pleasure he thinks he can get from certain things, right? That the philosophies that such a person can present are useless and actually dangerous. Therefore, we don't have the business to produce our own factories in our fertile brains. Rather, we come with a blank slate to the Guru Parampara and allow them to share us the divine knowledge that is born of their pure devotion to Krishna. And we share that Bhakti Vedanta, that Bhakti Siddhanta, and ultimately Bhakti Vinod, and so on and so forth. So, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All glories to the Samma devotees.